Welcome back to the Rory Talks Football channel, your daily Arsenal news, updates, debates and my opinions. And today we have a Chelsea versus Arsenal combined 11 ahead of the game on Saturday evening. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. We're trying to hit 6,000 subscribers. I massively appreciate the support recently. We're uploading more regularly and I'm really enjoying it. Now, the reason that I wanted to do this video on this channel is that I do a lot of these on my TikTok, right? And the issue I always find is that I don't have time to fully explain every decision. And because of that, I don't have time to give justice and fairness to the players that I don't pick. So I want to make a longer video where I can make those arguments for each player. I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments, what you think, who you disagree with. I'm really interested to hear that. But we'll get into it and we'll start in goal. We'll use that one, that's better. Robert Sanchez versus David Raya. Now, the first argument is Raya versus Ramsdale for Arsenal. I think most Arsenal fans would agree David Raya is likely to play in goal for Arsenal, and on that basis we'll use him as the Arsenal argument against Robert Sanchez. Now, I think Robert Sanchez has had a very underrated start to Chelsea life. I think he's had a good start to the season. You know, Chelsea have only conceded one goal fewer than Arsenal so far this season, and only City have conceded fewer than them as well, who have conceded 6 with Arsenal. And his save percentage is in the top five in the league, which is really good. Now, the arguments against him, I think, are distribution. I think it's the reason that he got dropped for Steele at Brighton. And when you look at Arsenal bringing in Raya because we want to take our distribution to an even greater level, I think that's where, for me, the argument swings in Raya's favour. I think they're both great shot stoppers. I think they're both very good at commanding their penalty area, at claiming high balls, but I think the distribution is the key factor. And for that reason, I have gone for David Raya in goal. And actually, truthfully, I think if you were to do a pecking order of all three, it probably goes Raya, Ramsdale, and then Robert Sanchez. But I do think Robert Sanchez has been a bit underrated so far this season. At right back, we've got Reece James versus Ben White. Now, these are based on form and on fitness. I am lenient with fitness, as in if it's a 50-50 that they'll play, I'll give the benefit of the doubt and I'll put them in. So Reece James is in the argument, and then it's whether he's better than Ben White. Now, a prime peak Reece James, I still think is one of, if not the best right back in the world. I'm happy to say that. The issue is how long it's been since we've seen a prime peak fit Reece James. In 2023, he's played 13 competitive games for Chelsea. They've only won one of those games. And on that basis, you know, he's not played this season, or he played the first game of the season and hasn't played since. I think there's a real form issue. And I think if you're looking at a player coming into this game, compared to Ben White, who has been absolutely solid all season, we know what he offers. He's an absolute rock for Arsenal and is always available. I think you have to put Ben White in for this specific game. Give it a few weeks. If Reece James can keep fit and build momentum, maybe it's a different question. But I think for this, right now, it would be Ben White for me. Let me know. That's a contentious one because I think a prime Reece James over a prime Ben White probably swings in Reece James's favour. Right centre-back, you'll notice there's not a Chelsea option here, because there is no argument. I'm sorry, there is no one in that Chelsea squad. There is barely a centre-back in the league that competes with William Saliba right now. And so you could throw Disasi in there. If you wanted, you could maybe argue Thiago Silva, but I'll show you why I've not argued his case for this one in a minute. Levi Colwill. No one comes close. No one comes close to William Saliba. So he goes in there. And then we have an argument between Gabriel and Thiago Silva. Now, again, you could say it's Levi Colwill for Chelsea, but I think the best person to put forward for Chelsea is still Thiago Silva. You know, Levi Colwill's had a good start to the season. I don't think it's been amazing, and I don't think he's a better option than Thiago Silva, who, I mean, look, let's get it right. Thiago Silva is unbelievable. To still be arguably Chelsea's best centre-back at the age of, 39 is he? It's outrageous. But we are, in my opinion, beginning to see that tail off. We're beginning to see that age impacting him. Not to the extent that it is to someone like Casemiro, who I think's form has fallen off a cliff, but I am beginning to see it. Now, his ability to read the game is so good that it doesn't actually impact him that often, but I think you do still see times, especially in one-on-one situations, where he's just not as sharp as he once was. And Gabriel, on the other hand, the past 5 games, since he missed the first 3 games of the season for whatever tactical reason, since he's come in, he's been absolutely sensational, alongside William Saliba. For me, it's Gabriel. I do think he just edges it. I think that's fair. But again, I can understand why a Chelsea fan certainly would take Thiago Silva over Gabriel if they wanted to. So another contentious one. And then at left back, now, Chilwell's obviously injured. Colwill has played there, but I don't think it's his best position. And I don't think there's really an argument that, Colwill gets in over an actual left-back in Zinchenko. So the argument is Zinchenko versus Cucurella. Now, Cucurella's had an impressive few games since coming back in at Chelsea. He had an awful season last season, but since he came back in, I think he's actually looked quite good. Obviously, it was a right-back in place of Malo Gusto who got suspended. But ultimately, I don't think there's really an argument that Cucurella gets in over Zinchenko, who is one of, if not the most underrated Arsenal player. I don't think people give anywhere near enough credit to Zinchenko for how impactful he is on the Arsenal squad, the way we dictate games with Zinchenko, the way the entire midfield plays better when Zinchenko is there. I don't think enough credit is given. Yes, he can get exposed in one-on-one defensive situations, although I actually thought he was fantastic against Doku a couple of times against Man City, but Zinchenko has to be there. He does have to be there. Moving on to the midfield. Now, the way I've broken this down, in my opinion, 2 of the spots go to 2 of these 4 players. You've got Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez, and then you've got Declan Rice and Thomas Partey, who is now back from injury. 2 of the spots go to these. Whether you want to play a 6 and an 8, whether you want to play 2 6s, it doesn't really matter. It's 2 of these 4. And I think there's arguments for all of them. I genuinely do. I think Declan Rice has hit the ground running. I think Enzo Fernandez gets discredited or perhaps underrated because of Chelsea's overall performances. But if you dig deep into the actual stats, if you dig deep into what Enzo Fernandez is doing, it is sensational. Like, his numbers are very, very, very good. And if you took him out of the Chelsea side and put him into a City or an Arsenal or a Liverpool, I think people would start giving him a bit more credit. You've got Thomas Partey, who is, at his best, probably the best of these 4, in my opinion. You might disagree with that, but I think Thomas Partey, at his best, in the 6, is the best 6 out of any of these players. But he is just coming back from injury. And then you've got Caicedo, who looked so good last season, but has struggled since he joined Chelsea. So I've gone for a midfield 2 of Enzo Fernandez and Declan Rice. I think that's very, not harsh on Thomas Partey, but I think Thomas Partey definitely has a shout to be there as the 6. But purely based on the fact that he's only just coming back from injury, and these 2 have been, doing it all season, I've given it to these 2. Now, how you want to do that, I would have Enzo as the 6 and Rice as the 8, personally. But I think that would be sensational. I think any midfield where you have those 2 in it, it's arguably, that would be the best midfield 2 in the league, in my opinion. Now, you could argue that Declan Rice and Thomas Partey might become that as well, but I do think you have to give Enzo the credit that he deserves, and he gets in there. And then you go to the final midfield spot, the more attacking midfield spot. Now, I've gone for Cole Palmer versus Martin Ødegaard. I think Cole Palmer's looked very good at 10 for Chelsea. I wasn't sure if he'd be able to do it, but I think he's looked good there. Now, you could put Conor Gallagher there, right? Chelsea have been playing with midfield 3s of Gallagher, Enzo Fernandez and Caicedo. I'm not even doing Martin Ødegaard the disrespect of comparing Conor Gallagher to Martin Ødegaard. So we'll put Cole Palmer there. Now, I do think Martin Ødegaard wins that argument, right? I don't think many people would disagree with that. And a midfield 3 of Enzo, Declan Rice and Martin Ødegaard is wildly good. Wildly good. Cole Palmer's unfortunate. He's just not done it for long enough. It's not really his natural position, I don't think. I do think he's better off the right-hand side. But I still think that of the fit players and available players, I still think Cole Palmer was the best option to put there. So not much of a debate for that one, in my opinion. Martin Ødegaard, is up there with one of the best in the league. Arsenal's captain, I'm not sure there's a single player in the league that you could argue gets into a squad ahead of Martin Ødegaard. I've now put Cole Palmer in again, because I do think he's better off the right-hand side. I think he's better than Madueke. I think he's better than Raheem Sterling, especially off the right-hand side. So I've put Cole Palmer up against Bukayo Saka, which, again, it feels harsh because it's not a fair matchup. Bukayo Saka has been doing it for much longer at a much higher level, has that consistency. The only doubt over Bukayo Saka is his fitness, right? But I do think he's going to play, and I think he'll be fine. So, again, not one that we need to have much discussion over, I don't think. I think Cole Palmer's got a lot more development to come. And I'm not saying that he won't ever be at Saka's level, but I also think Saka still has more development to come as well. And obviously, if you're picking a team for the game on Saturday, you would pick Bukayo Saka. Off the left-hand side, there's Saka. What a wonderful man. Off the left-hand side, Mudryk versus Martinelli, Sterling versus Martinelli. I think now that Mudryk is beginning to look a bit better, beginning to hit a bit better form, I would feel like if I was a Chelsea fan, I'd rather put Mudryk in than Raheem Sterling. It's a difficult one. Raheem Sterling's looked good this season, but I don't know. You, as a Chelsea fan, you can put Sterling in, you can put Mudryk in. I think ultimately the answer is Gabriel Martinelli. Martinelli starts ahead of Mudryk, starts ahead of Sterling, starts ahead of Cole Palmer, starts ahead of Madueke. He is unbelievable. His output, his finishing, and that's the big thing, right? The one thing that Chelsea have struggled with so much this season, and I know Mudryk had a fantastic goal for Ukraine in the week, but I think one big thing Chelsea have struggled with is finishing. They can't finish their dinner, whereas Martinelli is one of, if not the best clinical finisher that Arsenal have. The raw pace, again, I don't think there are many people that could argue Sterling or Mudryk ahead of Gabriel Martinelli. And then up top, I've gone Nicholas Jackson. You could go Broha. I think it will be Nicholas Jackson that starts against Arsenal. I might be wrong. Is he injured? I don't think he's still injured. He might be injured. Either way, against Gabriel Jesus, again, I don't think there's much of an argument. Broha, Jackson, much younger, much more raw. I don't think either of them have the level of build-up play that Gabriel Jesus has. And I mean, arguably, Jesus' biggest flaw, I guess people would say, is his ability to finish. I don't think either Jackson or Broha have shown that they have a better ability than Jesus anyway. So Jesus goes in there, and then finally, there he is. And then finally, the managers. Pochettino versus Mikel Arteta. I do rate Pochettino. I do think Pochettino is the right man for the job at Chelsea. I do think if you're looking at a squad that he needs to refine and grow with and develop, and really the objective is to get them back into the top four, I think he's the right man for that job. However, Mikel Arteta's Mikel Arteta. What he has done at Arsenal has been absolutely sensational. He's proven that he can take a bigger mess, in my opinion, than what Pochettino has taken over, and through the process shown that he can take it up to where we are now. Now, you could argue Pochettino's done that at Spurs, didn't win anything, didn't have a great time at PSG, so purely based on what they've done at Chelsea and Arsenal, Mikel Arteta has to go in there. And so what we end up with is a squad of 10 Arsenal players and 1 Chelsea player. Now, I'd say the back 4 and goalkeeper, you could argue for Chelsea players in there based on the fact that Chelsea have only conceded 1 goal only conceded 1 goal more than Arsenal this season. So to have a complete whitewash of Arsenal players and defenders and goalkeeper maybe is harsh. But I think on the individual battles, I do think the Arsenal players come out on top. I also feel like the way that Arsenal defenders have to defend, press so high up the pitch, which is creating so much more opportunities for us, that has to be taken into account. And then you've got Arteta as the manager. Based on recent form, both this season and last, I do think it's only fair that probably there are 10 Arsenal players in there. Let me know in the comments. Like I said, please do subscribe, smash a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll be back tomorrow for a full Arsenal versus Chelsea preview. Good evening.